Welcome back to Watching Business Incorporated on Channels Television. We head to the markets now with Aniti Edit. Aniti, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Ini. Okay, yesterday we saw the market making a rebound into positive territory, and of course, that rebound is still being sustained at intraday. We'll get to see the numbers as well as the numbers of other major markets on the African continent as well as other indexes around the world. Okay, so now let's start off on the African front, where we see the Nigerian stock market, the all-share index of Nigeria's stock market in the green. It says yesterday it climbed into the 97,000 points, and of course, very much holding on to that level. Although it had risen up far above this level, but thanks to the bargain hunting of some listed equities yesterday, we see the market holding on to that 97,000 points. At some point, it was struggling in between the 96,000. Of course, bargain hunting and putting your money where your mouth is what lifted the market to that 0.13% at intraday. And then for the JSE Stock Exchange, we see the market has receded all the way from the 84,000 points. Just a little bit below the 82,000 points, and at intraday 0.39% is what the market printed. And of course, we're looking out for how it ends Friday's trading session. And for the other markets on the African continent, we see the EGX for Thursday as well as the Nairobi Stock Exchange All-Share Index. That's for Kenya. One in the green and the other in the red for the close of Thursday's trading session. So that's it for the market for the African continent. And then let's move over to the fixed income market, where we're talking about yesterday's, a little bit about yesterday's performance for the fixed income market, where we see Treasury bills on one side bearish, and then the bonds market a little bit on the profit selling side, and for the OMO market. Then, of course, we're also looking at Nigeria's debt market, where we see the expectation of next week. First of all, we're expecting that the domestic bond, the domestic debt as well as the foreign debt report is due to be out by the National Bureau of Statistics. Maybe today, but we'll look at how that is applying into Nigeria's debt market, and of course also taking a look at the intraday market numbers for the equities, for the fixed income markets. And now let's bring in Adeola Aremu as a fixed income dealer with FSD8 Merchant Bank. Okay, maybe he's not ready for now, but we'll get back to him and, of course, have him give us some up-to-date information about the fixed income market. And now let's move over to the Middle Eastern markets for the indexes, for the stocks there. Dubai and the Abu Dhabi, the stocks on this list, on these exchanges, we see so much of fair value transactions going on there, and the markets are very much in the green, 0.34% at intraday. That's for the Dubai exchange, as well as the Abu Dhabi 0.8% intraday for that market index. But for the other parts of the Middle East, Saudi Arabia 0.65%. For the close of Thursday's trading session, 11,842.56. And for the Qatari Stock Exchange, we see Thursday's close 1.47% in the green at 10,398.32 for that market. So basically for the Middle Eastern market, it was green, one for Thursday and the other for intraday Friday's trading session for that market. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Asian markets first. Obviously, Asian markets, the stock indexes there, they were mostly mixed. And of course, looking at the inflation data out of India, which is one of the region's biggest economies there, the mixed picture you see here, we saw some profit taking on the size of Japanese stock exchange there. The Nikkei 225 down by 0.68% for the close of Friday's trading session at 36,581.76. For the Kospi, we see the impact of that 5-day strike action by the workers at Samsung. Samsung has its plant in central India, and of course, we didn't see much of that impact taking toll on the South Korea's stock exchange index, although the strike is happening within India there. But we see the market not unfazed on that strike by several hundreds of workers within that country. And for the Hang Seng Index, we see a 0.84% uptick, 17,383.37 for that market. And of course, we also see for the Shanghai Stock Exchange, for the Shanghai Composite, which is in China, we see a kind of a mixed picture there. But we heard that at some point, the consumer confidence in that country is beginning to wane, in contrast with what in the relationship that they have between the US, the two biggest economies. So at some point, the confidence level in between the relationship between the US and China is beginning to wane, and we see if we can have Shanghai Composite Index there, you see it in the red, 0.48% for the close of Friday's trading session. And for the Nifty 50, that's for the India Stock Exchange, there we see 0.13% pullback, and this is because at some point we saw that investors reacted to the August inflation figure out late on Thursday, which showed that the consumer price index of that country, it rose to about 3.65% year on year, and rising from a 5-year low, which it was initially projected to be at about 3.6%. So that's just slightly above that projection, and also beating an expectation of a 3.5 from the economies that are polled around that market. So that's it for the markets here. And now let's take a look at the U.S. stock markets. Where we see the U.S. stock markets, the equities futures there rising. Dow Jones Industrial Average 0.58%, 41,096.77. That was the last tracking that we had there. The S&P 500 4,995.76. All in the green. The Nasdaq, we saw Nvidia making some imprints, positive imprints, and lifting both the S&P as well as the Nasdaq 1%, which is what the market is looking ahead of the opening bell by 2:30 Nigerian time. Now, what is Wall Street expecting for later today? Wall Street is today they will be looking towards the August import prices data, which is due out in the US sometime around 9:30. 9:30, 10 o'clock later today, and as well as the preliminary consumer sentiment figures for September, which is also scheduled to be released on the world's biggest economy later today. So far, the market as we've had first the consumer price index and then the producer price index. So these other indexes, and they are all coming way ahead of the Tuesday and Wednesday Federal Reserve's meeting, which is having all the attention of global stock markets as well as global central banks around the world. So now let's catch a glimpse of the closing the trading performance of Wall Street, and we have Washington correspondent Mario Bird with those summary.
The U.S. stock market was a bit up on Thursday as the Dow Jones was up at 0.6%, the S&P 500 up at 0.7%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq up at about 1%. This has many investors excited and hopeful that this means a steady economy in the next days and weeks ahead, as it is expected that there will be interest rate cuts in the next few days. There's much anticipation around the Federal Reserve announcing a potential 0.25% rate cut. This could mean much for the future of the U.S. economy, and especially as people are looking to purchase in the near future.
Our Washington correspondent Mario Bird with a close summary of Wall Street performance for Thursday. And now we were talking about the fixed income market, Nigeria's fixed income market, where we see so much to digest from yesterday and today, as well as the outlook for intraday and for next week, which of course is going to be a holiday shortened week. And then let's bring in Adiola Aremu, fixed income dealer with FSDH Merchant Bank, for some of this what to expect, and then a recap of the activities at the fixed income market. Thank you for joining us, Aremu.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
Okay. So now let's start first. Just give us a recap of yesterday's trading at the fixed income market. First, for the Treasury bills, were of course coming the morning after that auction that we had. So how did investors react, to some of these numbers from the Treasury bills auction?
Thank you. So in the Treasury bill auction that happened, we saw that DMO actually intervened. DMO actually sold 162 billion that was on offer. We saw subscription of about 563 billion, which was 3 times 3.5 times the size that was on offer. What that meant also was that we saw stop rates actually reduce across board, particularly on the 1-year bill to from 18.94 to 18.59%, as well as the 91-day bill that closed at 16.63, as well as the 182-day bill that closed at 17%. I beg your pardon. And now, coming into yesterday, we saw that there wasn't a lot of demand because of where market opened. System liquidity was actually in a repo of about 591 billion, and that kind of stifled demand across board in yesterday's Treasury bill space. In the bond space, we saw that yields actually started to expand. The reason for that is because one, system liquidity that was tight, as well as the increase in expectation of inflation for the September figures because of the rise in PMS prices.
Okay, so now that takes me to my second question with you. Yes, we know that these debt instruments is actually where the government gets some of this funding, and at the same time, Nigeria's debt level is currently at 121.67 trillion naira, and that number is expected to rise if the National Bureau of Statistics releases that number maybe any minute from now. So now, what do you expect if it comes in higher? What do you expect the impact to have on the fixed income markets?
Right, thank you. I think that figure that you've mentioned, yes, 121.67 trillion for Q1 figures. We expect that it will rise by the time we see the Q2 figures. However, if you try to break down the composition of that increase, what you'll find out is that a large proportion of it will come from the FX side, from the external borrowing side, and that is because of where FX has been over, Q1 and Q2. For instance, NAFEX was at 1,330 naira to a dollar as at the end of Q1, but that figure has increased to 1,488 naira to a dollar as at the end of Q2. So what I expect is that we'll see at least an increase to about 62 trillion if we convert it to the naira for the Q2 figures, because in terms of the trend of the foreign borrowings, right, you'll see that over the last 3-4 quarters, it's actually been very stable at around 42.1 and 42.5% levels, 42.5 and 42.1 billion dollars, right? So the actual increase is in the exchange rate and not particularly in terms of the borrowings. So even if we see an uptick, our expectation is that we'll see it rise to about 132 to 135 trillion by the time we see the figures later today. But as I've mentioned, most of that uptick comes from the external borrowing side, and then just a little of about 4 to 5 trillion on the domestic borrowing over Q2.
Well, I think we'll leave it there, and of course, expect that the MBS should release that report later today, or maybe by extension next week. But we do keep our eyes out for your expectation for the country's total debt for the second quarter. Thank you so much for your time on our show.
Thank you.